Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is my absolute honor to be here as the facilitator of this group, where we are launching the book by Himani, Dalmia, and Neha Bhatt. Sleeping Like a Baby is a groundbreaking book. We know that sleep is the topic of many challenges and conversations in everyday life, and especially so for newborns and their parents. So this is a book with Indian context, with both research and tradition, and it brings together in really simple language what parents wish they knew if they're parents like me who had babies long ago, but fortunately for the parents who are here, about baby sleep, and not just restricted to the mechanical action of sleep, but the parenting paradigm at large. So welcome once again. And I also want to thank Penguin Books here, so that we are all here to talk about this, so that all of you can hear into this. And if you are young parents, you know young parents, this is for everybody. So my name is Divya, and I have been working with young parents, babies, pregnant mothers, and now in the field of therapy for the last 2 decades. And once again, it's my absolute pleasure and honor to be here. So before we go any further, I have a few housekeeping rules, and I would request each of you to keep your videos and audios off, which way you will be able to see the panelists on the full screen and you'll be able to enjoy the conversations. And we do have a question answer session at the end for about 10 to 15 minutes. So please note your questions, your comments, and we will save them for later so that our guests can answer them and pay attention to them, the attention that they deserve. So I'd like now to introduce you to our panel here. So we have Himani Dalmia, who is the co-author of the book, and she's an Australian certified infant and child sleep specialist and co-founder of the support group Gentle Baby Sleep India. She's also the leader of Lalesh League, which is the largest nonprofit for breastfeeding awareness. She has already written a book before that, which is a best-selling and critically acclaimed novel titled Life is Perfect, which was published in 2009. She was formerly a member of the Times of India edit page team and has contributed widely to newspapers, magazines, and journals. A children's picture book by her is currently under publication by HarperCollins India. Himani is graduated with honors in English from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi, and holds a master's degree in South Asian literature from University of Oxford. She currently lives in Delhi with her husband Akash and 2 girls, Devika and Yamini. So from Life is Perfect, Times India edit page to sleep, I think the girls must be contributing, and we are waiting to hear from her about that. Neha Bhatt is an award-winning journalist who reports on public health, human rights, gender and education for leading international and Indian publications. Her work has been published in The Guardian, Al Jazeera, The Globe and Mail, the British Medical Journal, and The Hindu, among others. Formerly a staffer at a range of news organizations, including Outlook magazine, she has won the Press Council of India, UNFPA, Lartley, and Red Ink Awards for excellence in journalism. Neha has also written widely on books, film, and culture. She holds a postgraduate diploma from the Asian College of Journalism. She's an advocate for conscious parenting and co-founder of the pioneering support group, Gentle Baby India, Sleep India. Neha is based in Gurugram, where she lives with her husband and son. On the panel, we have Professor Anupam Sibal. Professor Anupam Sibal has been a pediatrician for more than 25 years. He has helped set up the first successful pediatric liver transplant program in India at Apollo in Delhi in 1998. Professor Sibal is the group medical director of the Apollo Hospitals Group, and he's the president of the Global Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, which aims to bring together 1.4 million physicians of Indian origin in the world on one professional platform from 53 countries. Professor Sibal is an honorary clinical professor at the Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. He's also the author of a national bestseller, Is Your Child Ready to Face the World? Professor Sibal is on the editorial board of 3 journals and has 115 publications, and he's edited a textbook of pediatric gastroenterology, hepatology, and nutrition. Pardon me, some of the words I couldn't even say. And then we have Yasmin Effath. She's India's leading biodynamic craniosacral therapist and an award-winning international board-certified lactation consultant and a bark flower practitioner. She's an international speaker and an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Her special interests lie in infant oral, sucking and airway dysfunction, tongue tie, birth trauma, craniofacial development, and a large range of chronic physical and mental diseases. Her approach stems from fundamental truth of human organism is complete and self-regulatory, and treatment approach is by support to mind, body, and spirit rather than intervention. Yasmin serves on many international and national boards and is the co-founder of the International Consortium of Okay, now I'm going to have her say it because I find it difficult to say this word, but it's ICAP. And she has spearheaded and dedicated her life to many projects with a central mission of advocacy, education, and awareness for integrative, multidisciplinary wellness approach worldwide. Her work has been published in the international journals and textbook, and she writes extensively on print and digital media on the subjects of breastfeeding, parenting, and health-related subjects. Her international award-winning film, Untying Breastfeeding, exposes the glaring, unseen obstacles to birth and breastfeeding that can help restore motherhood, and has been widely celebrated in over 1,400 cities worldwide. And she's currently pursuing her PhD in metaphysical science. So, thank you for being here and welcome. Now, I would first begin with our authors, and for Himani, I'd like to know, how did this book come about? Something about your personal journey.
Thank you so much, Divya. And I just want to say that it's so wonderful to have you here, someone that I respect so much and admire so much for all that you've done for young parents and babies for over 2 decades. So what brought about this book? When my first daughter, Devika, was born over 6 years ago, in the beginning, of course, we had all heard that, there are sleepless nights ahead and babies don't sleep. And, the newborn phase was a blur and it went by. When she was 3 months old, there is this golden period, which I found out about later, at the age of 3 months, where babies sleep these long stretches at night. So, my husband Akash and I thought that we had nailed it. We were like, we are these rock star parents and we have this miracle baby and, everything is going so well. Of course, that did not last because as one of my elder cousins said to me, baby sleep is not linear. And so don't get ahead of yourself. So at the age of 4 months, Devika hit the infamous 4-month sleep regression. And now, she was waking up every hour in the night. And that sent me down this rabbit hole of research. A friend from the US had just gifted me my very first baby sleep book, and I was hooked. I understood now that there's more to baby sleep than meets the eye. And I read everything that I could find, books, research, articles. I observed my own baby very closely. I observed myself closely, and I realized that sleep is something that needs a little mindful attention. This was around the same time that I reconnected with Neha. Neha and I were in school together, and we reconnected once we became parents. Neha had a son about a year older than Devika, and we realized that we were both equally passionate about baby sleep. And so we co-founded the Facebook group Gentle Baby Sleep India, which took off like lightning and now has over 50,000 members. After that, I became a leader of the Lalishe League. I also gave birth to my second daughter, Yamini, and that kind of reinforced my belief that baby sleep is a subject that is very, very real and needs attention. I also decided to get certified. So I studied baby sleep with the Institute of Sensitive Sleep in Australia. I got certified and I started to, in addition to all my voluntary work on Gentle Baby Sleep India, I also began to help parents professionally if they needed support on baby sleep. Neha and I both being writers, originally Neha and I were both writers and still are. It kind of organically just made sense to collect all of this precious knowledge and experience that we have gained over the years and with our own babies and all the research we had done and the thousands of parents on Gentle Baby Sleep India to collect it in a book. And we were delighted that Penguin signed on the book. Meru Gokhale, who is the publisher at Penguin, was a new mother herself, and she saw the value in the book. She was on board and she godmothered it from the beginning. So here it is now, the book. So in this book, we've tried to cover both the philosophical and theoretical aspects of baby sleep. So for example, in our introduction, and we have a chapter on the history of how babies and in fact humans have slept over millions of years, sleep in ancient cultures. We also talk about the importance of sleep, how the biology of sleep works, the different sleep rhythms in the body, how does the body control sleep? And then we also have chapters divided by age. So 0 to 4 months, 5 to 7 months, and so on, all the way up to 5 years. So this book covers sleep for babies and toddlers from 0 to 5 years. And for each stage, we talk about what is the developmental stage that the child is at, where sleep is concerned, what is normal, what to expect, how best can you manage sleep. We have a chapter called the sleep pyramid, which explains how sleep consolidates over the years. We also have our brilliant and, if I may say so myself, tool called the shared method, which is an acronym, the shared method, that actually, is the secret sauce of how to manage baby sleep. We also have very practical tools and strategies for parents. We have chapters on sleep for the modern parent, how to manage with nuclear families, if both parents are working outside the home, solo parenting, managing social commitments, travel, jet lag, living abroad without help. We address a lot of the common sleep myths, sleep training, sleep associations, old practices that may not be so advisable anymore. And then we also have special chapters on sleep for siblings and a bonus favorite chapter of ours on bedtime reading. So, we've really tried to collect all of our knowledge on baby sleep in this book. And we wanted to be that one baby sleep book. As I mentioned, I had read every single baby sleep book out there. And yet if someone asked me to recommend a baby sleep book, I could not. I still don't know that one baby sleep book that I feel contains all the answers. Except now there's this one, which I feel does. So we want this to be, the ultimate bedside companion for parents of children aged 0 to 5 years.
Thank you for that. So there is a really personal tie-in for Himani, and I'm sure there's one for Neha as well. So Neha, could you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and also about the Gentle Baby Sleep India? We heard a little bit about it from Himani.
Sure. Thanks, Divya, and thank you everyone for being here. My sleep journey was almost identical to Himani's, which is actually what kind of really brought us together. And it was very smooth and easy till the 4th month mark, when the famous 4th month regression hit, but no one had told us, when we became parents. And that's when I realized that I really needed to understand how baby sleep works. And I read and I read and I read, just like Himani did, the works of child experts like Dr. James McKenna, Dr. Carlos Gonzalez, Sarah Ockwell Smith, and really gentle sleep experts whose work was so fascinating because it was so deeply linked to our instincts and how we are essentially wired. And it is listening to those instincts actually that really worked for us. We followed our son's sleep cues, which were very much aligned with the international recommended age appropriate sleep routines for different age groups. And this we did while offering him all the physical closeness that he required to fall asleep and to stay asleep. And bam, it just worked like an alarm clock. He was sleeping at the same time every day. And I think investing this time and effort in the early years really paid off big time for us. And our days were drama free. We were able to manage our work routines. Our baby was well rested and thriving. And at the same time, we understood that baby sleep is not a linear journey, as Himani said. There are ups and downs. There is no magic wand, and there are phases where there will be more frequent wakings, which are called, typically phases of sleep regressions when children are going through developmental leaps. Such as when they crawl, when they learn to crawl, to walk, to talk, etc. But overall, if you understand that biologically, what biologically normal sleep really looks like, you come out of the first 3 years of parenting with your sanity intact. And yet on the parenting groups that we were on, we found that parents were really struggling with sleep deprivation. And either the babies weren't sleeping because they were overtired and unable to wind down, or their parents had actually misunderstood what biologically normal sleep patterns really look like, such as frequent wakings at night. And they imagined this to be a sleep problem. And so, as Himani said, we started Gentle Baby Sleep India as a voluntary effort, which we did in our time after, our professional and personal commitments. And it became the first and the probably still the only Indian support network for babies in India. And we did this to help parents really build on healthy sleep habits in young children from day one. And we essentially do this on our group in two ways. On our group, you will find a wealth of resources that we have built over the years to help parents understand every aspect of sleep, from regressions to nap transitions to ideal sleep environments, sleep cycles, etc., which is, of course, also there in the book. And we also have a team of a dozen mothers like Himani and me who are equally passionate and who do this alongside their jobs and personal commitments, and who bring knowledge and experience to help answer the daily sleep questions that we get on this group. And we try and tailor each response to suit individual needs of the parents who are posting these queries. And now we have over 52K members. And that's really one of the reasons why we wrote this book. It's very deeply tied to our work on the group. And because we know there are so many people struggling out there. So we are, with this book, we just want to take that knowledge and experience to a larger audience.
Thank you, Neha. So we're hearing that sleep is a struggle and many, many parents are struggling. So I want to take my next question to Dr. Sibal and saying that since sleep is such a challenge, how do you see the difference between parents who came to you 2 decades ago and now, per se sleep, but also per se child rearing, approach to child rearing, Dr. Sibal?
Good evening. It's indeed a privilege for me to be a part of this program. Congratulations to Neha and Himani, and thank you, Divya, for the invite, and Penguin, and great to have Yasmin on this panel. Why are we talking about sleep? Let's pause for a minute. Okay, we all know the 3-minute or the 3 rule, right? You need 3 minutes of oxygen going out of the system, and that's the end of life. 3 days of food, 3 days of water, end of life. 3 weeks without food, end of life. But why are we talking about sleep? About 11 days of sleep and you're gone. And serious manifestations after not sleeping properly for 3 days. So I think, it's air, it's water, it's food and sleep. And I think sleep is something that we don't think about as much as we should. So I'm so glad that we are talking about sleep. Why is sleep really important for kids? As parents, and I'm a parent too. What we want is we want the best life for our child, and we want our babies and children to be happy. A baby normally smiles 300 to 400 times a day, right? And adults smile 4 times a day. Now, if you want your kids to smile more than 4 times or 40 times, and if you want them to smile 100 times a day, you want your babies to be happy, the answer is sleep. If you want your child to grow well, the answer is sleep, because that's when the growth hormone is released. You want your baby to be healthy, the answer is sleep, because there's so much correlation now on the immune system and how the immunity is enhanced with good sleep. You want your baby to be smart. Everybody wants smart kids, right? The answer is sleep again, because cognitive development and proper sleep are very well correlated now. You want your baby not to put on too much weight. And honestly, we've had problems with COVID and obesity. I have to tell you, in children, the answer is sleep. Because again, the release of leptin hormone, which has an important role in hunger, is related to sleep. So clearly, sleep is extremely important. I won't really get into the difference in how parents raise children today compared to how they were, doing that 2 decades ago, because that's a big topic in itself. But if I were to just look at sleep management and what parents do today and what they did a while ago. So there's some fundamental changes that one has noticed, and I'm sure everyone here will echo those sentiments. The joint family. There was a support structure. That support structure, I think I see every 5 years, is kind of disappearing. And although many of us believe that new is great, but old is gold for many things, because the kind of advice that you could get from someone who'd been through what you're going through was actually gold. And that unfortunately is missing. So, we've lost that important tool that moms and dads had. We also have, because we don't have that support structure, we tend to Google these days, and we have information overload. And I'm just going to give you 2 examples. Friday the 13th, just Google that. You get 2 billion results. 2 billion results on Friday the 13th. And this is really going to surprise you. If you actually go on to PubMed, which is the medical database where all peer-reviewed published medical literature is housed, you type Friday the 13th. Believe you me, there are 508 papers on that. Peer-reviewed papers. Type babies and sleep, and I did this today. There are 3.35 billion results. 3.35 billion results. And go on to PubMed. Hold your breath. There are 15,749 peer-reviewed papers on sleep and babies. So there is an information overload, and Himani talked about it. There's so much there, but how do you make sense of it? So no support at home, information overload. You have absolutely no idea who to follow, what to follow. Another point that I think we can't ignore is that many people today have absolutely crazy schedules. They're themselves sleep deprived. So they don't understand themselves the value of proper sleep. Now it's fantastic, the new series is coming out on Saturday, and let's do binge watching and let's be up till 4 a.m. And then we can sleep on Sunday because we have Sunday to sleep and get up late. But our body doesn't see the difference between Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. For us, for the body, it's the same cycle that it must follow for proper health. So when you are yourself sleep deprived because you have a crazy schedule and you haven't given it importance to to what would be appropriate sleep behavior, it's not surprising that you're going to get it wrong for your child. The most sleep deprived country in the world is Japan, and India is number 2. I don't have exact data, but there's some data from the US that suggests that about 40% of the population actually sleeps less than 7 hours. And we know that the body ideally needs 8 hours. Some people manage with 7, but honestly, less than 7 is going to start showing an impact over a period of time. So I think it's really these factors that have resulted in some amount of confusion. And also what I feel is going away for what was a traditional, more gentle approach to getting the baby to sleep right. We have terms like sleep training. We have terms like, okay, you're just being too casual in terms of, handling the baby, you're spending way too much time in the baby's room, how's the baby going to get independent? And all these myths have been blown to bits by our learned authors. And they actually, what I really liked about the book, and I have to say it's a very comprehensive, well-researched book, is that they've actually looked at it from an Indian perspective. And I think that's extremely important. Sleeping in the baby's room is something that is not acceptable in the Western culture. Interestingly, it's very acceptable in Japan. 80% of moms will actually sleep with the baby. And in India, traditionally, we've had the baby sleep in the same room as the parents. But of late, I'm seeing that that's going out. And I think we're trying to get very regimental, very strict, trying to get in a lot of discipline without realizing that, discipline is not something that you need to get into place when it comes to proper sleep behavior. You have to be gentle, you have to be calm, you have to be patient, you have to empower yourself with the appropriate knowledge, seek help where it's needed, and then hopefully you'll get it right. I say hopefully because honestly, it's hard to get sleep right for a baby. It's not easy, and therefore a book like the book that we are laying our hands on today is really handy.
Thank you, Dr. Sibal. That was really insightful. And what it brought forth for me, I'm going to take that question to Yasmin, that there is this expertise coming in for everything separately. And like Dr. Sibal said, that, children used to sleep with their parents, and now we are hearing this in breastfeeding as well. So there's this fragmentation, sleep training, and then breastfeeding, and there are all these little parts that brings the parenting together for people. But I'd like to kind of ask you to comment on the fact that even though they are fragmented, there's a lot of overlap between sleep and nursing. So nursing to sleep and co-sleeping and nursing, what do you have to say about that? And then also, how they are tied in. The baby is one person. I know that that's your approach. So how they are tied in together, the sleep and the other parts of the baby growing. Yasmin, you're muted. You need to unmute.
Sorry. Okay, I'm going to start again. Yes. So I feel very honored to be a part of this panel today. And I've known Himani for a long time. We've been on text and, we've just been on interaction, and also the fact that she did Lalich League leadership as well. So those are days that, we used to kind of really sometimes exchange some ideas, maybe just personal ones, in terms of just about breastfeeding and things like that. That was a long time ago. And again, when she got in touch with me recently, I was so excited to hear about this book that was coming in. Way back, it takes me back into my own times, about 14 years ago, when I became a mother myself. And with a preterm baby, it was challenging. It was challenging to bring many aspects together. Just the fact that, we were mostly alone, having to deal with newness of everything, about bringing up a family, understanding how do I kind of juggle between managing home to managing a baby who needs extra attention, also putting together the sleep and breastfeeding to be such a huge issue at that point. And that's one of the reasons the film also was kind of being born through that aspect of it. And to answer what Divya was asking about, just knowing that there is a sense of coherence, I think that's very important to understand, that sleep is about coherence. And this I understood over a period of long time. And juggling between too much information that most of the urban communities seem to be having access to, vis-a-vis what we learn over a period of time culturally, and also just being intuitive to your own bodies and to your own upbringing in a setup like India, it amalgamates together in some way, and I felt that most of the struggle for sleep happens to be in the urban cultures, where we have so much information. We have information, but everything is about cerebral understanding about every aspect of humankind, every process of human beings, about whether it's sleep, whether it's birth, whether it's pregnancy, whether it's labor. Every single thing seems to be kind of torn apart to understand each aspect of it, and thinking that just knowing about it is going to translate into life. I think that is the dissonance that we live in today. So going back to in tuning within oneself seems to be the idea. And this came home to me, Divya, especially at a time when my baby was barely about 4 months old, and corrected age, she would have been about 1.5 to 2 months at that point, because she was preterm. I was reading one of the books, which was The Baby Whisperer. If you might be aware of it, I'm sure you bumped into that. That was the first book that landed in my hand. And I was thinking like, oh my God, this is a brilliant book. Everything made sense to me when I read the book. Okay. And everything looked like it has to work clockwise. And everything needed to fit into our life in terms of a routine. To bring the child, a little baby, a newborn baby into that particular routine was in some way sort of short of actually sleep training, which Dr. Sibal just mentioned about. And I was struggling because it was not occurring, it was not happening, it was not translating. And my mom at one point, I remember when I was sitting and reading that book, she told me something. She said, babies will grow and sleep and connect on your bosom, she said. And at that point, I remember I dismissed her. I said, you don't know, Mom. I know better. Because I was kind of loitering with the kind of information I was reading. It's not just the book, but I was reading many other things, just like Himani and Neha went. I think many of those mothers would actually jump into doing almost a PhD in trying to understand about breastfeeding and sleep, right? But when she told me this, and later it so happened that I also got another book, which was lactation. I don't know if anybody maybe Himani must have read that book as well. So it's a lovely book that came into my hand, was published by lactation. It's The Art of Breastfeeding. And I turned to one of the pages, maybe about the second chapter or the third chapter, and the same words which my mom told me just a couple of weeks ago actually just stood up to me in that book, which talked about how connecting with your baby, knowing what their needs would be and how they sink in with you, is how growth really happens. So that really resonated with me very, very strongly. And I fell back into understanding about just respecting what culturally has been transferred from mothers, from grandmothers. I think that's there's a lot of coherence, like I mentioned to you. And that coherence then translates into an understanding for me about, because today when I'm doing therapeutic work, I'm not just looking at infants, specifically infants, but also looking at sleep as an issue throughout lifetime. I'm also looking at adults, I'm also looking at young children, and major issue for them is about restoring sleep. And that's why this book is so close to my work. And I love the fact that there's a book for Indian parents today. Because we read in information, when we read in, it's not in context for where we live. It's Western, and there are different aspects of how culturally children grow in other cultures. We may have a broad understanding about growth and development, but when we contextualize it into Indianness, I think there are some very precious things that come out, actually just emerge out. And when I say coherence, what I mean is connection between mother and baby, with Dr. Neil Bergman actually have some fantastic research on, where he looked at preterm babies and how the connection, the rhythm of the sleep and breastfeeding together, it really works together in such a tight fashion, almost like a jigsaw puzzle sitting together. The piece of the puzzle in newborn babies really fits in closest to breastfeeding, growing on the breast, or nurturing, being nurtured on the breast, or mothering at the breast. All of these things can bring some sense to it, actually. He looked at the limbic system, and the limbic system has three components to it, which is the gyrus, the coagulated kind of, the brain stem that is basically, how the brain looks, they have those gyrates, right? They look more like a corrugated kind of a board when you look at them. Then there is this amygdala, which is the center of understanding about how the body and the mind learns from the emotional experience that's around us. That really regulates the entire other system that we thrive on, or we live on, or we develop on. So when a baby is born, or when the baby is in the womb, there is the container which is completely in sync with the entire cycles that the baby requires for optimal development. It's interesting to see that the sleep cycle that happens within the womb does not seem to be so much impacted to what is happening outside of the womb. For example, a mother who is from a low resource, or a mother who is living in a highly technological kind of environment, the baby's growth, if you look at it both from weight as well as how the baby's growth has to be during the 9 months, isn't very different. So when the baby is born, on average, if you look at it, about 3.5 kilos of weight is what you see, even if the baby is born in a very low resource setup. It's not that the baby is going to be extremely, low weight, versus a baby who's born in a modern culture, maybe who has more resources to food. Generally, during pregnancy, you're not going to see that going to be translating into maybe a 5 kilo baby or a 4 kilo baby. That's the beauty of nature. So what happens inside then needs to translate what's outside. That's when the environment changes, which means the epigenetic environment outside dramatically changes once the baby is born. And then the entire responsibility or the duty then becomes about the parents of how they can recreate that womb-like environment outside for the sinking in to happen. When the limbic system can then learn how does this work in terms of coherence. Small example, I'll tell you. The breathing rate for the baby is much faster than it is for us. But at the same time, the learning ability for the baby is the baby, when the baby is at the breast, breastfeeding, as well as sleeping with the mother or any caregiver for that matter, which is primary caregiving. While on the skin to skin, what happens is the babies learn to regulate their breathing with an adult. And that comes from coherence. It can't come from anywhere else, which means it's also a learned behavior. There's a biological concept of it. There's a biological part of it, which keeps us alive, but also a part of it is coherence, which we co-regulate with each other. This is not just with infancy, it happens throughout lifetime. We are constantly seeking another human being in contact with us to co-regulate. Just for example, what Divya did in the beginning of the session, she said, let's ground ourselves together. What does that even mean? She was talking about coherence. So can we sync in with each other, with our breath, with our connect? Even if we're doing it virtually, we're still doing it. And to bring that a little bit into context, which I find very exciting in my understanding, is that bodies are not just made out of organ systems, tissue systems, nervous system, but also an electrical system. And that charging that happens, which often is read as an overcharged baby or, overregulated. What's the term that Neha used? She was talking about, you can actually unmute yourself and remind me if I'm forgetting it. She said that the children don't know how to wind themselves, she said.
Overstimulated?
Overstimulated, yes. Overstimulated. What does it even mean when you say overstimulated? It's the electrical charges that are there in our body which are not able to ground itself. We have grounding cables that are available for our buildings, for our architecture that we have, but we forget we need the same as well. And I did a very small, experiment. If you can allow me to share that. Recently, I took a multimeter and I grounded one of the cables into that, and I gave one of the other pins to my daughter, who's 14 now, to hold it in her hands. And I showed her how much charge she has in her body. That was somewhere around 70 to 80 millimeters in the multimeter to check. You can, all of you do that actually. So that, then I grounded her by allowing her to touch, the grounding material. And that immediately comes down to say about 0.5 or 0.1 or almost to 0 levels. And she actually said, Mama, I'm feeling much calmer. And that can happen in a very short period of time. This can happen with our coherence. If a mother is carrying a baby constantly, she's earthing the baby or she's actually grounding the baby. So that's a very, very important part of understanding about it. Simple other ways is you stick your legs into a sand near the beach, you're grounding yourself. You touch water, you're grounding yourself. So these are some ways of how naturally we used to do before. And what's being missed today is that we're moving away from nature. We're moving away from core community to islands. We want to live like islands because we think that's more independent. It allows us to kind of just perform the best we think we can intellectually maybe, but we are driven to come back to connection. So that's, I think, very, very important part of it. And for me, breastfeeding plays an extremely important role in reconnecting that coherence and bringing back that coherence back again, because it programs the mother and baby together. You can't escape that. If you're breastfeeding your baby, you will be brought to kind of really come back to that rhythm, that natural rhythm that is required to wire yourself, to ground yourself. It's not just for the baby, it happens for the mother as well. She also finds rest. And I'm sure a lot of those parents who are co-sleeping with their babies also find rest because they are sleeping with the baby, don't have to step out from the bed into another room to kind of look after the baby. So I'm sure in one of their shared, in the book as well, they mentioned shared method. I think one of those few key things that I noticed is about all sleep times, whether it's a nap time or the real sleep time in the night, both are in coherence. And that's the beauty of their book, actually. It says, hold your baby while you're napping.
Yeah. So Yasmin, that was wonderful. And, it just reminds us that we are not independent from our children. They're not independent from us, and we are not fragmented. So I want to go back to the authors again. I want Neha, tell us that what are the common challenges that you've heard over the group and the course of this book? And does that tie in with this idea of fragmentation? This really result oriented. I have to get my baby to sleep. I have to breastfeed. I have to discipline. I have to make them independent. This whole result oriented parenting that is doing, and what is arising from it.
Right. So, the biggest challenge, of course, is just the lack of information. And as part of our book work on this book, by information, I mean the right kind of information given in a coherent way, which doesn't confuse parents and rather helps them. So as part of our book on this, as part of this book, we conducted a sleep survey on sleep patterns in children and parental response on our group. And we studied the observations of nearly 800 parents. And the results were actually quite telling. Over 40% of them reported that they didn't know anything about baby sleep before they joined our group, which really points to how little, effective literature there is for biologically normal sleep. And what we found that the parents' chief concerns on our group have been over the years that their child is awake for most of the day. So from the time the child is born, he or she is not napping, sleeps very late at night, often after midnight, is awake, often at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, resists all naps and bedtime. And many others have struggled with their babies needing artificial sleep aids such as cradles, swings, doulas, pacifiers, and bottles to sleep. And most parents who join our group simply throw up their hands and say, "My baby won't sleep. What do I do?" And this is tied to feelings of deep and intense anxiety, depression, exhaustion especially among mothers, because they're so confused about why their child doesn't sleep the way they want the child to sleep. And what compounds this issue is receiving conflicting bits of advice from friends and family, such as keep your baby awake during the day so that he sleeps at night, don't let your baby fall asleep in your arms, feed your baby formula and solids so that he sleeps longer, and that all these advice, all this advice actually tends to be at odds with a child's biological needs and impulses. So our mission really goes deeper to challenge systemic problems which have actually created a deep sleep crisis in our society. And one of the biggest problems in the way our social structures are currently is the lack of support for mothers. And the fact that the burden of a child's sleep largely falls on her, even as she's expected to do home chores, do office work, and it's just endless. So the pressure then falls not just on the mother, but by extension, also on the child, who's expected to behave far older than his age, which typically leads to power struggles, anxiety, depression, resentment in the mother, especially, and of course, by extension, the rest of the family. So actually, we really need to address this problem of the support system, which needs to be in place before the baby is born or soon after, which means, hiring paid help, hiring alternative caregivers. I mean, they could be paid caregivers or other family members, and who can also do the heavy lifting. And the father too has to be involved in helping the baby sleep right from the beginning. And at the same time, another growing concern that we see and a huge challenge in this space is that with this immense sleep deprivation and the confusion around how children sleep, that comes and the sleep deprivation that comes with early parenthood has given a rise to a massive sleep training industry, which of course is normalized in the West, but it's making its way into India as well. Even though it is, largely frowned upon in many Asian cultures, it's there even in our circles. And so just to clear the air on sleep training is essentially a method by which you compel your baby to sleep in a way that doesn't come naturally to them. It means that you expect the baby to fall asleep on her own, to sleep away from you and not wake up till the next morning. It often means that you leave them to cry till their body shuts down out of exhaustion and they fall asleep. It means that you withdraw physical closeness and comfort at the time of sleep. Now, several studies have linked sleep training to heightened anxiety, stress, and addiction in adult life. Because when babies are left to fend for themselves, they're deprived of the happy hormones that we all have a right to, and their wiring changes. I would highly recommend listening to and reading the work of physician and author Gabor Mate, who speaks about this at length in very revealing ways, the link between sleep training and addiction in later life. And for most of human history, children have not slept independently. It is an unfair expectation to have of them. Babies were and are not meant to sleep through the night. They are typically light sleepers. All children are light sleepers. And they tend to wake up and call out to their parents at regular hours at night, which has actually ensured their survival in the wild in ancient cultures. So safe bed sharing, being in close quarters with their parents is what we recommend, and which is important to make them feel comforted and secure enough to listen to their own internal sleep cues and be able to fall asleep. And as their brain matures, they are able to soothe themselves back to sleep. It's a milestone that you don't have to hurry along. It comes in its own time, typically between the age of 2 to 3, some achieve it later, but there is no hurry to get there. So our book really deeply goes into these challenges, and we challenge myths and conceptions and misconceptions and offer parents an evolutionary lens through which to understand their children's sleep and what kind of support they as parents and caregivers need to offer them.
Thank you. And so I heard you say, biological sleep. And I'd like Himani to just comment upon what is biological sleep. We've heard that word a couple of times.
Yeah, thanks, Divya. So, yes, what is sleep biology? Because we've spoken a lot about, what we should not do, and we do spend a fair bit of time on that in the book as well, because this is such a myth-infested subject. But we also have some very coherent tools in the book. So, we do give a lot of information on the science of sleep, how babies sleep and how we can help them sleep better. As Dr. Sibal had, spoken about, sleep is very, very important. It's very important for babies. The growth hormone is secreted while babies are sleeping. It's linked to immunity because cytokines, which are the proteins that are the building blocks of immunity, are actually produced during sleep. It affects children's attention spans. It affects brain growth, their ability to learn. Neural connections are actually formed while a child is sleeping. As Dr. Sibal had said, it also affects obesity. It protects the heart. Naps and night sleep have different functions. So they're not interchangeable. So keeping a child awake through the day in order to make the child sleep more or better at night will not only backfire, but it's also not healthy. And it's detrimental because naps have a different function. Daytime naps have a different function from night sleep. So on Gentle Baby Sleep India and in the book, we lay out some very important facts about baby sleep and baby sleep biology and what parents actually need to do to help their baby sleep better. As I mentioned earlier, in the book, we call this the SHARED method. SHARED is an acronym, and each one of those letters stands for something. So, for that, please read the book. But just to bring out some of the things we touch upon in that, of course, there is physical closeness. There is holding your baby while your baby is, for most of the first year, babies need to be held even for daytime naps. Bed sharing at night. Of course, all of this is very important. But along with this, there are some other aspects which we call sleep management or sleep parenting that we actually need to take care of. So it's very important to understand, for example, that there is this concept of overtiredness, right? Babies don't just fall asleep when they're tired. They have something called awake windows, which means they can be awake for a certain amount of time before they get overtired and their body releases cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And now that cortisol is like having a shot of coffee because that doesn't allow you to fall asleep. It disturbs sleep and it builds up through the day and it disturbs sleep at night. So it's very important to educate ourselves and to watch our baby. Actually, babies give you cues. They give you early sleep cues. We just need to know how to recognize those early sleep cues. But if we want a little more help, then if we educate ourselves on the appropriate awake windows for each age, then we know when to look for those cues, right? So it's a combination of knowing those awake windows and watching for early sleep cues. The second concept to understand is sleep cycles. So all of us sleep in cycles, not just babies, even adults sleep in cycles. And an adult sleep cycle is about 2 hours long. At the end of every sleep cycle, all of us wake up. As adults, we just roll over, we fluff up a pillow, we pull up a blanket, and we go back to sleep. In the morning, we have no recollection that we actually woke 3 or 4 times at night. Now, babies develop these sleep cycles, in fact, during the infamous 4-month sleep regression. And their sleep cycles are much shorter. They're about 40 minutes to start with, and then they increase very, very gradually over the first 5 years or so. And they too wake at the end of every sleep cycle. However, they do not know how to start the next sleep cycle on their own. So they need help from a parent to soothe them and to start the next sleep cycle for them. The ability to connect these sleep cycles is developmental. And just like a baby learning to sit up, crawl, walk, talk, the ability to connect sleep cycles develops organically. Parents don't need to do anything. In fact, you cannot do anything to hurry that process along. So your baby is not waking up because your baby is hungry or has a bad habit. Your baby is waking up because it's developmental. It's the end of a sleep cycle and your baby needs help from you to start the next sleep cycle. This happens during naps as well. So our babies need help to take long restorative naps. If a baby wakes up and we just assume the nap is over and we just pick up the baby and take the baby out, whereas in fact it was just the first sleep cycle that was over, then you're going to have an overtired baby on your hands. So, these are some of the things that one needs to be aware of. It really, really helps to have an age-appropriate routine. And we talk about this at length in the book. For example, between the ages of 8 and 10 months, babies organically come into this beautiful pattern, which we call the 2-3-4 pattern. And their awake windows naturally become 2 hours, 3 hours, and 4 hours. So, if you follow that, if you observe your baby and you follow that, you will suddenly have a baby who's sleeping very well, who's taking very good naps and is sleeping fairly well in an age-appropriate manner. I mean, the best they possibly can at that age, right? Early bedtimes also have a huge role to play because our body's circadian rhythms are in sync with the rising and the setting of the sun. And babies' circadian rhythms are extremely sensitive to this. So if they have an early bedtime after the right number of naps, they actually sleep a lot better. India as a culture, we all have late dinners, late bedtimes, and this, impacts babies and young children because very often the parent will go to bed at 11 or 12 or 1 a.m. and the baby will also go to bed at that time. Whereas the optimum bedtime for a baby is around 7 or 8 p.m., depending on the age. So it's also very important to know what is the kind of sleep environment that your baby needs, because babies are very easily stimulated and distracted. So they need physical closeness to you, but they also need dark and quiet rooms to sleep in, and especially for their daytime naps. Our modern societies with artificial light and cars and mixies and TVs and so much going on will just simply not allow babies to sleep. So what they need for the early years is a dark and quiet room to sleep in. So these are some of the things that we actually explain in great detail in the book. We talk about the research around it. We reason it out. We give practical tools on how to actually implement it, what an age-appropriate routine really is. We also talk about safe sleep, because safe sleep is very important. Babies do need safe sleep environments and positions to sleep in to reduce risk of SIDS, etc. However, it's very misunderstood. There is this belief in the West that bed sharing is unsafe, which could not be further from the truth. Bed sharing has been practiced for millennia and is still practiced in most of the world today. And in fact, the SIDS rates are lower in Asian countries that bed share. And of course, we also talk about breast sleeping, which is breastfeeding and sleeping together. We were very honored that Professor James McKenna of the Mother-Baby Behavioral Sleep Laboratory, who's really the father of biologically normal infant sleep, wrote the foreword for our book. And it's an extremely enlightening foreword where he talks about these biological functions and how the mother-baby dyad or the parent-baby dyad actually works where sleep is concerned. Our book is actually really full of solutions and tools for parents. And that's what we hope will really help parents in their journey in the first 5 years.
I'm going to take that to Dr. Sibal again and say, Dr. Sibal, is there anything from the book that really spoke to you and that you'd like to say that this is congruent with the kind of advice that you have offered to parents?
Thank you, Divya. In fact, this is perfect timing because I have to go in the next 2 minutes. So what I liked about the book is that, it's very practical. It tells you what to do, what not to do, when to intervene, when not to intervene, how to intervene. It's got a lot of evidence and research behind it, and it's written in a very user-friendly format. My takeaway from the whole discourse on how we need to get babies to sleep better is really we need bonding. I think mom and dads, of course, need to bond with the baby. That's crucial. I think breastfeeding, cannot overemphasize the importance of that. This requires patience. It's both an art and a science, and it requires a fair bit of flexibility. I say read the book, follow it. Hopefully you'll get your baby into a nice routine. Hopefully that routine will continue when the child becomes a toddler and then becomes an older child. And hopefully things will stay there when they become teenagers. But we know that things dramatically change when you're dealing with a teenager. And as I go and urge everyone to remember what Charles Wadsworth had once said: by the time a man realizes that his father was right, he has a son who thinks he's wrong.
Thank you so much, Dr.
With
Sibal.
that, I'm going to log off. My apologies, but I have another
Not
meeting.
at all. Thank you so much for
much.
joining us. It was really insightful.
Thank you.
Also, before we take up questions, one line from Yasmin, if you want to talk about a part of the book that spoke to you, Yasmin.
Yeah, I think what stands out to me so marvelously in the book is about how do we normalize what really is true about nature. The point of departure is not the fact that, we try to say, okay, there is an issue with the modern society. How are we going to fix those issues? Because when we tell that, okay, you need to hold your baby during nap, it can sound insane to a lot of parents. But the fact that they normalize it, they bring it back to knowing that this is normal as a base of how we need to be connected with each other. And that's the beauty of it that stands out so wonderfully well in the shared, method. So it's not about trying to give a solution to what we think is a perceived solution to things, or trying to fit to what people will require. There are some small examples I could give you, Divya. When we do breastfeeding counseling, there are lots of parents who are looking for solutions which suit their life. I want to wean my baby, but I don't want to take that decision to wean my baby because there is a social pressure today, because people know that breastfeeding is important. We have learned about it. There's information that's flooding in. So therefore, how do I make that decision in my life? So they reach out to counselors looking to see if the expert can kind of give you a stamping to go ahead and do what you need to do, which will fit into my life. And that could be so true with sleep, because people are looking for sleep solutions.
Yeah.
And so it would be easy for a practitioner who's helping parents to figure out how to help their baby sleep to do, for example, sleep training in different variations, not necessarily putting the baby to cry it out, but generally just asking the baby to sleep in a different room or asking another, maybe some extended support to do it. So they could find solutions which work, which happens even in breastfeeding. So if I have to wean my baby, I'm possibly going to put a portion on my breast or on the nipple or some bitter things on my nipple. This is a very common cultural practice, which is existing for a long time. But having said that, returning back to trusting that relationship, I think that's the touching, very sensitive part of this book, which really stands out for me.
Right.
That we are not trying to kind of architecture the solution to what our modern societies will require, but to take them back gently into knowing that this is the pace at which the nature really evolves. I think that really is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have the book with the science, and we have the book with the solution, when we have the book with the touch of spirituality, because it's inspiring us to be inspirited and being parents to our babies. Okay, so we have time. We are at time, but we could take a couple of questions if anybody wants to write in. We're getting some messages of how great this session was. So thank you, Neha and Himani, for the book and for being here. A big thanks to Yasmin and to Dr. Sibal. He's not here, but a very big thanks for taking out time and being here with us. And if you have questions like when will my baby sleep the whole night, or what is the behavior pattern for a 6-month-old, there is the Gentle Baby Sleep India Facebook group. And of course, this is a good time for you to order your copy of this book so that you have those answers. Himani also offers personalized consultations, and you could reach out to her as well. So those questions are not for this platform, but if you have questions like, well, I did ask a few about what is biological sleep, or what is about the book, or what does regression broadly means, and this is absolutely the place to ask it. So if anybody has questions, we'll give it another couple of months. Yes.
Hi, this is Netra.
Hi, Netra. Hi, Netra.
And then I'm a mom of two boys. So I just have a question. Like, Advay is my first son. I was co-sleeping with him only, and I am also right now. The only problem, the only problem I have is not a problem, not with me, with the others. Whenever I'm asking him to sleep with someone, it might be because of my health or something else, he's not able to do that. Even with his father, we both sleep in a different room because my second son is still crying. So he's getting disturbed. So we are sleeping in a different room. The next room he's sleeping, he's not able to go there and sleep. If he's sleeping with me, I'm just lifting him, and I'm just what to tell? Smooth, I'm just letting him down. Within 10 or 15 minutes, he'll be back to my bed. I don't know why. So at this point, he's like, "Illa, because you co-sleep with him for 5 or 6 years, still now he's not able to sleep. This is a bad thing of being solitary." Still, I'm getting a comment, which I don't accept or whatever, but I'm not clear about it. Did I do a mistake, or is it the way they respond? When will this go? I have a little doubt on this.
Himani, do you want to take that as a mother too?
Netra, how old is your older one? How old is your son?
5.5.
Okay. Okay. So this is very, very normal for a 5.5-year-old. A 5-year-old is honestly still very young and still needs a very, very close, still has a very close bond with the primary caregiver or caregivers. So, resisting that separation is very normal for a 5-year-old. What I would suggest, and yet I understand the challenge with two, because I have two little ones as well. So 2 points I'd like to make. Firstly, I would like you to look into his schedule and ensure that he's sleeping enough, which at 5.5 years should be about 12 hours. So if he is sleeping enough in the day, then he will be better able to emotionally regulate himself, and he'll be able to handle separation better. But if he's overtired, everything will be more challenging. However, at 5.5 years, you shouldn't actually be facing a problem keeping both children together, because a 5-year-old sleep is still fairly mature. If you want him to be able to sleep with others, it's very important to work on that relationship and that bond. So it won't happen overnight. So that closeness needs to be built slowly over time and with you. And as Akanksha is reminding us, we actually we want to keep the questions a little bit more general and theoretical. We understand your question is a very, very relevant one, but if you could join Gentle Baby Sleep India on Facebook and post it there, or get in touch with me directly, then we can do a much more in-depth discussion on this. But thank you for raising that question, and because it does allow us to make the very important point that even a 5-year-old is actually just a baby, and still needs a lot of care and a lot of attachment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Looking at the time, I just want to make it comfortable for everybody who has given their time here today. I want to thank you all for being here and supporting us. I hope you're all taking away something that might be offered either for you as help, or you could offer it as guidance to somebody else, and reminding you all that the book is available. You can order your copy or gift it to whoever needs. Sleep is important. And thank you once again for being here. Yeah, I think we're wrapping it up, Himani, because the questions will obviously be personal.
Sure. For all personal questions, I mean, please, all of you, feel free to join Gentle Baby Sleep India. We're happy to help with personal questions, specific questions suited to your specific needs. And of course, Himani offers professional sleep counseling as well. So you can directly get in touch with her as well.
That's right. Because I realize that people are going to ask absolutely personal questions. And you've already actually, both of you have explained, broadly what sleep, why is it important, what is it all about. And we've heard coherence from, and that bonding has come back again. The coherence is the bonding as the baby grows up. So I take this opportunity to thank all of you for coming here, supporting us, encouraging us. And thank you, Yasmin, for your time. Himani and Neha, thank you for having me. It was absolutely fabulous for me to be a part of this group.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Divya.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Also want to thank Akanksha behind the scenes for making this work without a glitch. So thank you. That's all from us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wish you all a good night's sleep.
Thank you and good night.